Hello, and welcome to the Automation Insider. My name is Joe McGrath, host of the Automation Insider and Systems Development Lead at Hy-Tek Intralogistics. We know that every day we're seeing more and more posts and activities and articles and videos about AI, how it's being used to augment the workforce, how things are changing faster than anybody ever really planned for them to change. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we got an expert in the field to talk about some new AI products and how they will impact today's knowledge workers. So Dustin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Joe. I'm Dustin Waybright. I'm a senior director for AI workforce solutions at Microsoft. I'm one of our experts on how these tools apply to knowledge work across many different businesses and industries. I happen to focus on media and entertainment, so we're going to see a few fun media and entertainment examples today, but I think the work that everybody does in different roles, there's applicability across when it comes to these AI solutions. By way of background, I've spent several thousand hours working with these tools over the course of the last 3.5 years, almost the entire cycle of this industry existing. And it's been incredible. And I think what you're going to see today are some things most people probably haven't yet been exposed to that are coming in the next month or two that are really going to change the conversation around the way you can use AI to streamline your job, to become more efficient, and to reduce some of that cognitive load and that stress you get from completing your work in the traditional ways today.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, I think one area, especially in the kind of supply chain, the automation industry, we have a couple of groups of people that have an intense amount of cognitive load, and those are going to be like our project managers, so the people that are responsible for making the system, and we have our design and applications engineer type folks, so the people that have to get the design right and go over all that work. So I don't know if you can give me some examples of maybe how these new tools can be used to help project managers or.
Yeah, so let's start off, and I'll maybe baseline a little bit with some things that folks are more familiar with, and then I'll transition into really what's coming next, which is human AI collaboration, human in the loop execution, as opposed to humans being the ones that are essentially guiding the entire process. So what we're looking at here right now, this is Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'm a Microsoft person, so obviously that's where I focus a great deal of my time, though I use everybody's tools. Yeah, I try to use everybody's tools, right? I want to be up to speed on what's in the market. But yeah, Microsoft's where I spend my time. If you're not familiar with Microsoft 365 Copilot, today we integrate both Anthropic and OpenAI solutions. So you can see here, I've got Claude Opus that I can work with in this chat. I've got GPT models. So this is an AI chat interface, right? This is a AI chat landing page. This is Microsoft 365 Copilot. You might be familiar with ChatGPT. Would be another example of this type of site.
There's exactly the same models as I can find on the Anthropic website or the OpenAI website.
That's correct. Yeah. So this is a subset of those models, right? Because we've got Opus and a few of the GPT models available to the general purpose user, but they are the same underlying models. Now, Microsoft has built different technology on top of them, things like WorkIQ, that gives them an AI model and understanding of the work each individual user does to help them whenever they're getting project updates, being able to pull information from Teams meetings, from emails, which I'll show you in a couple minutes, in order to get an accurate timeline and changes over the course of the last 3 months. So they're the same models in the background, but Microsoft has put other technology on top of it. And we also have technology like Anthropic's Cowork that's coming into Microsoft 365 Copilot, which I'll show you today. But just so you see, this is what the interface looks like. Now, what you might be familiar with in the past, and I mentioned, Copilot's integrated to all my work, so I don't really have to give it, context necessarily on what I do. It knows what I do. It knows who I work with. It knows what I work on. It knows who I've been talking to, right? So I don't have to give it a ton of context on that. But in this case, in this particular company, so this is a media and entertainment company, but we also happen to operate theme parks. And we got this application called ParkFlow, which is a back-end application that manages things like telemetry for ride queues and wait times and how many times per hour a particular ride is running. And then it also feeds into the guest-facing application where they book things like reservations at restaurants, or they decide that, if they want to go to the latest Star Wars ride because, there's not a line right now, or it's only 2 hours or whatever the case may be, right? But this application Parkflow, we're actually re-engineering. There's a product owner on it. And so there was an original timeline that we came up with a few months ago. So I might say, give me the original project plan table for the Parkflow application roadmap change without any updates from the document. So here I'm just going to have the AI go out and find this information, right? We're going to get in some really fun stuff, but this is kind of just like the very basic use of AI. Find some information, summarize that information, make it, oh, I didn't want to do that. Find some information, summarize that information, make it easier for me as a employee, as a user, as a worker, not having to go out and do all that myself. So what I would typically have done in the past, before Cowork, before the new technology, is this sort of collaboration, where maybe I go find a specific piece of information, I review it, I make sure it's what I want, and then I go back and I ask the AI to change or update or adapt it. So in this case, you can see it's going out, looking for the original plan table, the features and things that are going to come in the application, and it found it in the updated product roadmap document, which it's describing here, and it brings out the project plan table, right? So there's something I know about project plans, which is the project plan table that was published on 8/5/2025, which is when this document was created. That probably is not valid anymore. There's definitely some of those milestones around, but dates have changed, priorities have changed, milestones have changed. And so in collaborating with AI here, I might say, use my files, Teams meetings, emails, and chats to collect a timeline update to the project plan and create a revised table, right? And so in this case, it's going to go through, and we're using reasoning models here, right? So if you're not that familiar with it, things like GPT-5 all the way up to now 5.2 or Opus from Anthropic, these are what we call reasoning models. So they're able to think in multiple steps and sort of evaluate how well they're doing at something, or if they need more information. They can use some tools. They can conduct multiple steps of research, right? And so that's where we're able to do some of these more complex things, like go back and get a month-by-month record from things like email, right? You can see missed IoT sensor audit kickoff, Q2 remediation readiness emails coming in here. So emails, meetings, Teams chats. So here's a meeting recording where we talk about sensor accuracy and rebaselining the project based upon the issues of sensor accuracy. And then it's able to lay out a new table for me, and it's able to kind of incorporate what actually happened during the project timeline as opposed to what was in the initial project plan. And then it can go out and cite for me what's causing it to make these changes, right? So this is really powerful. It's really useful stuff. Have you seen folks doing some of this stuff before, Joe?
Yeah, well, actually, so a lot of times I'll try to figure out like how a project is going, and I'll go ahead and say, hey, let me try to find the project manager's like project update sheet, and I can have Copilot go and hit 10 or 15 of these and give me a summary of it. I think the thing that always made me nervous in the past, and like actually you just kind of showed a pretty nice solution, is how do you know that it's right? Like, what is the source? And I definitely, I still spot check. I don't know at what point I'll get over it, or like we'll know that the technology is good enough that you don't need to spot check anymore. But yeah, this is absolutely kind of a game changer for project managers. Now that I say that out loud, I probably should spot check the project managers anyway. I don't know if that technology is all the way there. I was a PM for a long time. I should have been spot checked.
I think Cowork can help you with that. So we'll take a look at it in just a minute. So this is what I would call this is kind of quasi-current generation. This is what we've been doing for a while. This is the way we're doing our work. In terms of the spot checking or the accuracy, like that's always a critical consideration. You want to make sure you're comfortable with the work that AI does. Copilot does like more than 95% of my work. There's very little work that I actually initiate outside of talking to Copilot at this point. For me, it's kind of a scale, right, of what the importance is. I've gotten very comfortable with the accuracy of the solution with my data because I've worked with it so long. But I would say, it's like 90% accurate. So there are some things in there that maybe don't reflect my tone or don't reflect the history or, that I would want to update if I wrote it personally. And so to me, it's all about the importance of it. Like if it's a critical decision point, it's external communication. This is something that's going to drive a lot of change. Like I need to spend my time just very quick, validate that everything is exactly as it is. I need to read every line item. As an example, if I provide an architecture or program design document to a customer, I'm going to pour through that. I'm not just going to flip it over to them. Other things like, my boss wants a generic update on some project that I'm working on because he wants to mention it in a meeting tomorrow. I might not look at that. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I might not look at that too closely because I'm like, hey, he's whatever. He's just talking at a meeting. I'm sure this is pretty good. It looks fine to me. So to me, it's kind of like, what is the scale of importance? Tells me how much time I invest in validating what the AI says. That's my personal way of doing it. It doesn't mean it's best practice. But if I go now, let's talk about this for a second. So I want to go to Cowork because this is just a traditional like AI chat experience, right? That we're familiar with. It's getting better. The integration to data, the reasoning, everything's getting better. It's more powerful. But the thing I really want to talk about today is this concept of Cowork. And this could be huge for somebody like a project manager because of the sheer volume of things that you can kick off. In fact, I'll start with an example, and then I'll back up and kind of explain a little bit more of what this is. So you can see Cowork here. I open it up. It looks like a chat, like the other experiences, but we'll see how that's different. You notice this little thing here. There's this whole list of interactions I've had. So these would be jobs or sessions. So these are things that I've asked Cowork to do. A little different than a chat.
Like an old chat session from the past?
Yeah. We don't quite refer to them as chats because they're a little bit different than a chat. But yeah, it's the same concept. It's just like this list of chats over here. For general chat, but these are all Cowork specific sessions or jobs. So you talk about project management. One of the coolest things that Cowork does is you can just tell it to do things on your behalf. Like I can be like, hey, summarize all the work I did last week, put the 5 most important accomplishments in a table and email them to Joe McGrath.
So it'll actually take that next. This is the maybe the big thing I've been missing from the chat experience. Like go ahead and send the email.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to show you. So as a project manager example, and I'll go back and show lots of this cool stuff. It's really exciting. As an example, there's this conference room B. So I'm a media and entertainment company. Studio productions are a huge project, obviously. Very budget conscious, very time conscious, and we're actually working on a new production in this company called Conference Room B. And I have an executive producer. So this person is the president of the company, Amber. There's executive producer running Conference Room B. Well, basically every Monday at noon, I have Cowork research the latest updates on the production, identify any outstanding deliverables and tasks, and then generate a 1-page Word document summarizing those outstanding deliverables and tasks. And if there are 3 or more, then to actually automatically set up a meeting with the executive producer so I can talk to her about what's going on. And so if I go look at the last time this ran, which was Monday, you can see here, it went and did the research. So here's the prompt. It kicks off with the prompt. It's got permission, which I'll talk about a little bit more, to create calendar events, right? So it can go create meetings on my behalf now in this chat. So it went through and it checked all the sources. It found 13 outstanding items. And so it created me this little Word document. So I know what those 13 outstanding items are. And I can see, based on a color scale, what's pending, what's in progress. I can see some red items where there's really not much that's been accomplished, right? And so now if I need to go brief with this employee or this, PM or this analyst or whomever this is, I've got a very tight little table of information to go look at. And then if we notice, if we go back to, let me close this, close the Word document. Once it got done creating the Word document, it said, hey, there are 13 items. That's more than 3. And it scheduled this meeting on Thursday with the executive producer, Eka. And if we go to my calendar, I will go to Thursday, which is this week. Yes, right here's the meeting that it's scheduled with me and Eka, outstanding deliverables. Unfortunately, there's a little editing, like layout problem here. You don't usually see this, but it's a newer technology, right? So quick working session to talk through the 13 outstanding pre-production and market deliverables. And it always adds a little sent by Cowork, so you know that it was AI automation. But so that's one example. Another example, maybe from this automation perspective, before we take a little bit of a step back, that's the different window.
Can it fight through calendar conflicts?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, let me show you an example.
That's the part
of
I hate
that.
the most. No, I'm not free at 1.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It can. Now, the thing I will tell you about this is that it takes a little longer, right? This is something where you're talking 5-minute minimum, 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on the kind of task you take.
Of runtime for the model?
Yep. And so it can do amazing things, but it takes a little time. It takes you a little time too. It can create a PowerPoint presentation that'll knock your socks off in like 45 minutes. I can't. So but then the benefit is I can get multiple of these sessions going, and we're almost getting to the point where now with Cowork, you're starting to live up to that vision that we're going to be AI managers, right? Like we're not going to be working so much as we're going to be managing the AI that's doing the work on our behalf. And that's sort of where we're getting to here. So as that example, like I'll go down here, I've got a lot of sessions. So it can do complete calendar management on your behalf. And one of the things that I haven't gotten into yet is the sheer volume of tasks and actions that it can take on as part of one session. Now, I'm going to talk to you in just a second about what that is. So you can see here's a prompt I gave Cowork. I have a scheduled shift and have to go to an executive offsite the entire week of 4/20. I have multiple meetings that week. We'll need to clean up my calendar, create a list of the meetings I have, then find a new potential time slot for each meeting, propose a new time for each meeting of the recipient, decline the existing meeting, and draft a brief 2-sentence note on why I need to make the change, right? So think about project management schedule. You could give it a list of meetings. You could describe a list of meetings, and you could ask it to set up or change, right, to work with you to do that with the meetings. Yeah, and what you'll see here is it pulls up the list of meetings the week of April 20th. I've given it permission, which I'll show you how this works, to decline, cancel, and send emails on my behalf. So it can do that now without asking me in this chat. So that's specific to this session. It can't just wildly go and do whatever it wants without asking for permission, right? It can't just start firing off emails to my boss unless I tell it it's allowed to. Yeah. Although, that could be handy. I don't know. There's places I'd like to go. But if I go back again to my inbox, you'll see I actually ran that test back on 4/5. So I go to my sent items, go down to 4/5. You can see, I'm so sorry for the short notice. I have an unexpected executive offsite. Can we meet Monday at 12:30 to 1? A mandatory offsite. Can we meet Tuesday at 1 to 2? Could we move this meeting to Wednesday, 4/29 at 4:30 to 5? And then you can see it actually, because I was maybe not as great with my prompt, it's a little redundant, but I did say send a 2-sentence note. So it also sent everybody an email explaining why.
It sent them all a different email too.
Yeah, you don't want to send a boilerplate. They'll think you're just copying and pasting.
Which is exactly what I do, by the way.
So you can see like the possibilities here. And the other thing I could do is, I could go in here and I could set up a Cowork automation where I tell Cowork if it receives a response to one of these messages to go ahead and schedule the meeting, or if it doesn't have a meeting time to reply back and suggest a new meeting time. So, the bounds of what we can do here, we're really just still figuring out. Excuse me. The bounds of what we can do here, we're really still just figuring out. But the possibilities are incredible. So, this is what we call a stateful execution system, right? So it's a long-running AI assistant. It understands the work that it's doing. It understands, what quality looks like. It quality checks itself. It looks for accuracy. It tries to make sure its outputs are useful, and it knows how to use tools, right? So you see that it's using Microsoft 365. It can send emails, Teams messages. It can reorganize my Exchange folders. It can move things in my OneDrive. It can delete files. It can create files. Like, it has all of this access. And then even beyond that, right, there's the extensibility component where, Microsoft is introducing these plugins that are both out of the box and that customers can build. So say you have a project management system, it is possible to integrate that project management system to Cowork so that Cowork can actually work directly with it and even make changes to that.
Dynamic 365. I think a lot of folks in like that supply chain industry will use that either as their ERP, or sometimes they'll inadvertently use it as a WMS. And so if you can have AI, go and check and run reports on that, it seems super powerful, and the thing that people spend a lot of time on that they maybe don't need to. That's pretty wild, man. So this is just like, is this out in the market, out in the wild right now, or?
It's what we call Frontier. So you see Frontier. So any company that has Microsoft 365 Copilot today has access to Cowork. We call it Frontier. That's kind of like our preview version, right? That's the pre-release version. It's the beta, essentially. So the company just needs to give users access to the Frontier services, and they'll be able to use it. But Cowork is available, and it should be generally available later this year.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't control those timelines, so if it's not until 5 years from now, you can't blame me. I'm just saying should be. So, but no, that's completely a joke. I do expect it pretty soon to be available to everybody.
So okay, I'd kind of set you up before the meeting. I had a couple of other questions that are like tangentially related. Like this is a super powerful product, right? And every week it does stuff that we don't really expect it to do, and it like is slowly changing the behaviors of people that use the product, right? Like the way you do a job today, you're not going to do tomorrow. And one thing I've seen a ton is that maybe there's some software platform or some job you couldn't do because the learning curve was too steep and you didn't have enough time, but now you can do it. So I work with some folks that vibe code real hard. And maybe it's a simulation software. We want to learn how to use the simulation software. We don't have time to fly people to training sessions and all that. So we can vibe code our way through learning that. It's super powerful. Now we can use tools that we couldn't maybe use otherwise. But at what point are you leaning on the AI too hard? And maybe you're not learning, or you're not making yourself better at the same time as you're kind of teaching the model. Have you ever had a kind of discussion about like when should you use it? When should you kind of lay off? Like when do you need to step in a little bit more?
Yeah, this is a really interesting philosophical discussion. And it's one that I've experienced to some extent myself, being such a prolific user of the technology over the course of the last few years. The first thing I'll say is I think it's a bit of a paradigm shift, right? We're all kind of starting to acclimate ourselves to this idea that maybe we don't work the same way that we used to. It's very early. In general, most people haven't had a ton of exposure to it, but there's a big contingent group of people out there, maybe 10, 20% even at this point, that are very familiar with this concept and are spending a lot of time figuring out how to use AI in their work. One of the things I worry about, as an example, I've always been very good at language and writing and things like that. I don't like to write the way that I used to. Like, to me, it seems like a tiring activity now. I would rather just go give my stream of consciousness to the AI application and say, hey, this is what I mean. Can you just write it? And so I find myself, I don't know if sometimes I'm stumped, and I'm having a hard time getting the words together, or I'm just not motivated, because I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, if I could hit a button and clear all the snow out of my driveway, why would I ever go shovel? Right? It's like, so there is that trade-off. We're all wondering what this does to our skills. But at the end of the day, you have to think a bit too, like, is that a valuable skill anymore? Like, knowing how to do advanced math in most professions is no longer a valuable skill, because there are tools and software applications and stuff that do it for you. Right? So do I need to be an excellent writer? You do a little bit, because AI relies on language, right? But, that's some of the things that I'm wrestling with. Like, what is my skill? Is it okay if some of the things that I used to do all the time, if I'm not doing them now, if I lose that skill, is that okay? And I don't know that there's an answer there. But that last piece is, that's kind of the thing when we talk about the math, right? So if you're going to go work on Wall Street, you have to learn calculus and all sorts of other math that's associated with markets and securities and stuff, right? But then virtually no one actually does that math when they get there. They use a Bloomberg terminal, they use applications, and
they have Microsoft Excel open right beside them.
Microsoft Excel, exactly. And I'm sure things are similar, whenever you're talking about the warehouse and project management. Um, but you still need to have some expertise, right? It's like, because I need to understand why this recommendation that I'm making is a good recommendation. I can't just trust the software implicitly that it's giving me and also even the software is giving me suggestions. I still have to use what is my greater context of being in this environment to decide whether or not this suggestion is the right suggestion or the right solution to the problem that I have. So I would say that's where it becomes important. So there's this discussion about what skills matter. And do I try to keep up all the skills I used to have, or is it okay to relent and say, hey, AI should just do some of this? I need to focus on knowing how to use AI better, which is true for everyone. And then the other thing is this domain expertise? Is this fundamental decision-making criteria? Is this the context of my profession? Am I a finance person? Am I an engineer? Whatever the case may be, then I think, you have to do the due diligence to understand why AI would be making the recommendations, suggestions, pulling information together the way that it is. So I think fundamental education, domain specific, is really important to being able to manage your AI. That'd be a couple ways I put it.
I think I inadvertently kind of landed in a similar place with it. Like how you do something is a thing that you can learn or offload. Like why you do something tends to be a much more important question, right? Like why are we kicking off this process? Why would I do it this way? And I feel like, and I don't know if this is just confirmation bias, but I feel like AI is significantly better at how to do it, right? It'll put together a plan and apparently now even help you execute that plan. But it's less good at why to do it sometimes, especially when if there's complex problems. And so there's still a person in the loop for a lot of these things, which I think is interesting. But so back to my kind of initial question, you've maybe felt some of this, but if you vibe code hard, do you start to move away from being able to answer why? Or do you think that that's kind of an irrational, I'm being a Luddite here?
No, I think unless you're intentional about it, I would say yes. I would say yes, because you're going to become more and more reliant on the technology. I think you need to be intentional about where you're continuing to focus on not just accepting the response, not just allowing the vibe coding to do all the work, but really understanding what the AI is doing and that it's the right thing that you want to have done and that it fits your expectation and your context and the things you're working on. If you're not intentional, I would say you could definitely drift away from actually knowing the why and just being in the how. Right? It's done. That's all I wanted. It's done. Right? So
I don't know why it's done. I don't know how it's done, but it's done.
It's done. That's all that matters. That's right. So I just ran another example live while we were talking. This is a relatively simple one. I can show you a couple other things too before we get finished. But so here was draft an email to Kai. So Kai's the marketing director in this company with a summary of the current status of Conference Room B, which is that show we're creating. Identify upcoming market considerations based on common marketing activities. So this is a whole bunch of thought and logic, right? For the upcoming phases of production. And then ask Kai to begin begin reporting status to me weekly. Make the email visually appealing. So it goes through, it conducts the research. You can see the thought process and the information it finds to draft the email. And then it comes down, your draft to Kai is ready in Outlook. So if we go back to Outlook.
So this used to be like what everybody was calling agentic, right? Where it's actually going to go do the thing instead of just tell you about the thing. Is that the leap that we're seeing here, or?
I'll explain that. It is in a way. So if you take, I just showed this email. So the status timeline. So this was literally sitting in my Outlook, right? It just created it and left it there for me to open and send. So this would be very relevant, if you're running a project or process or your program manager, because you can kind of see the layout here. Current status, green light, pre-production, gating. We got the timelines laid out for the various steps in the project. And then, from a marketing consideration perspective, we're taking all the things that need done, which it doesn't have to be marketing. It could be quality assurance. It could be calibration. It could be a first run of a particular system that you've engineered. But all the things that need to happen from a marketing activity perspective, and then laid out with a suggested time frame. So, if I had to do this myself, this would take a while. I would never be able to make it this pretty, but it would be like an hour of time at least just going out and getting, and that's if I'm familiar with the information. And so this is a task I can just hand off and have my Cowork complete for me.
Digging through emails and SharePoints is actually hard. I've found, because not everybody saves a file the same way, but it does seem like Copilot is very, very quick at finding files and context pieces.
Yep. And that's because there's what we call Work IQ, which is a set of models, services, information, basically that help Copilot understand your work. And so all of your email and your SharePoint sites and stuff, as an example, are all indexed into Work IQ. And it uses that index to understand your work, not just to find information. And so using context, it's able to find kind of like the corpus of work that is associated with what you're talking about. And then within that corpus of work, say, oh, there's the emails that Joe's looking for. In terms of the agent question you asked, though, Joe, like that is exactly where we're at. So we don't technically consider Cowork an agent. Cowork is an AI application. But the hope and promise of agents, like here's one that I built. If anybody's not familiar with agents, right? Because that might be, I think everybody's heard the term, but like, what is an agent?
There's some semantic problems around different companies use it in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. At a base level, it's a foundation model, so it's an LLM or 2 or 3 or 4. It's access to information. Like in this case, I can build agents in Microsoft 365, and I can give them access to my email, right? Or I can give it access to files and folders or specific documents or SharePoint sites or meeting histories, right? It's a set of instructions that tell the agent how to use its tools and what it's supposed to do and what the outputs are supposed to look like. And then, a set of additional capabilities, like if it's supposed to be able to create files, et cetera. So at a very basic level, an agent is just an AI that's been preconditioned to do something with a certain set of tools in a certain way. So whereas if I go to chat, like I'm all on my own and I'm figuring everything out and I'm explaining everything to Copilot, when I'm using an agent like this parking lot expert agent that I created. So this is like managing parking for a facility. This is actually an amphitheater, media and entertainment again. I could say something like, there is an accident blocking the VIP entrance. I need to reroute exit traffic. So, right, this agent is a contextualized expert on logistics around the World Amphitheater, which is an amphitheater example that I used to create this agent. And so it's really designed to help frontline staff with things like supervisors managing staffing positions and schedules and incident management and situation crowd control, right? So here's a clear executable route plan, accident blocking VIP entrance, egress lot, backups are Oak Street and Pine Street. And so, get VIP. So suspend lot B exit to Pine Street, redirect VIP traffic internally for lot B through internal drive lanes. Use cones to create one-way internal loop from lot B to lot A/D to avoid cross traffic. So it goes through zone leadership, assign a parking lot zone leader. So if I'm a frontline employee, this agent knows how to help me with this.
But it's almost like it's like an AI that has a template to answer a specific, like smaller range of questions. Or is it something more than that?
That would definitely be a big part of it, and maybe has access to more systems and data specific to that process.
It has like context specific or company specific, like we don't ever block Pine Street, and that's in a context document or something it has access to?
Yeah, it would be in a context document, some one part of the information that it uses as a source, right, would tell it that, yeah. But whenever we get to Cowork, this is a little different. So we're not really setting up and customizing an agent down to a specific purpose. What we've got is a technology that it has understanding over a long cycle. So reasoning, memory, understanding over a long cycle of completing work. So I don't have to build it per se to execute certain steps in certain ways for certain tasks Like I can give it instructions to help it do the same thing over and over again, but it's smart enough to figure out how to do what I ask.
Based on having used it a bunch in the past, so it's building context from watching you.
Well, so yeah, so if I asked it, so it doesn't have the same context as the other, maybe I would ask, and let me find out. Well, we're not going to have enough time for that to run, so I won't do it now. But so as opposed to like having to go engineer in a sense or connect all the different sources to get the knowledge base in there to create a flow to say you do step 1, you do step 2, you do step 3, you do step 4. Cowork is intelligent enough. It's almost like having a human assistant where you can give it a task, you can give it some description of what you want from the task, and it can go figure out how to get the task done. So I don't have to be nearly as descriptive. So as opposed to like what was the concept a couple months ago of building agents, a lot of things that might have been an agent, like an agent that manages project deliverables automatically, you don't need anymore because the AI can just do it. And any user can describe to the AI what they want and say, do this every day, do this every time Joe emails me, right? Or do this, this is what you're going to do when I ask you, which goes back to one other thing I'll show you, which is you can give it skills, right? So if I go back to one of my Cowork jobs.
I would love to have some skills.
Oh, it'll be the first time you can create skills. Yeah. So what I did was, and you can use AI to program AI, which is kind of back to your vibe coding. But I use skill management in Cowork, and I said, I need a new skill to give me a structured project briefing for the AI theater expansion project. And I gave a little example of the format that I would want, like output format, projects and scope, et cetera. It creates the skill. So this is all markdown, right? It's a markdown file in YAML format, just basic text information, nothing too complicated. Sounds technical, but it's not really. And then it gives itself a score. By the way, it makes great web pages. Sometimes I do my presentations as web pages now instead of PowerPoints. But so it gives itself a score, which it rates itself very highly on its ability to make skills.
Me too. Yeah. So what is it? What is a skill in this sense?
So what a skill is it's whenever you make a certain request, the wording of that request will trigger an association with a skill, and that tells the AI specifically how to complete that. So it's essentially it greatly simplifies the process of interacting and get what you want. So if I had come here before creating this skill and said, give me a status report, I don't know exactly what I would get. That's not super descriptive, right? But because I created this executive status briefing skill, which you can see actually just lives in my OneDrive under Documents, Cowork, Skills, and then I created the status report, and I just literally just saved that file that Cowork created for me. So if I say any of these terms, let me just go back here. Yeah, so if we look at this report on how the skill works that I was showing you a second ago, it's loading up. Okay, there we go. You can see these trigger phrases. So this is an executive status report on the projects that the company's working on. And you can see it tests all these different phrases to say, put together a project update on park flow. Okay, well, that would be an example of when to use the skill. Schedule a portfolio review. No, that's different. Don't use the skill, right? So it uses these triggers and keywords. And so because I said status report, that trigger, that's semantically close enough to one of the triggers for the skill that it decides to use it. So right here's the skill, executive status briefing. I can click on it if I want to go see what it does, right?
It just describes how to make a status briefing.
Yeah, and not just make a status briefing, but make it based on the priorities that I want and the structure that I want with the sources that I want, right? So I get my executive status briefing. And so I could do this for all sorts of things. So if I have specific tasks and things or data or information I work with or the way I want to see things on a regular basis, I can just create skills. And then all I got to do is say, hey, where's my briefing? Or, it's going to be fun as I want to create, I haven't done this yet, but I want to create some skills that you trigger with just nonsense words. Like I know what the skill does, but, I'm like Mount Rainier and it, processes a financial update for the quarter. I don't know.
It's like a sleeper cell kind of code word.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Trigger my agents.
They're secret agents at that point.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think you can see though, there's just just an incredible amount of capability.
Like this does a lot, and it's going to keep doing. Like next year, it's going to be a different thing. Like in general, like what kind of advice would you have for like a PM or an engineer or an ops manager? They have access to use these tools. Like what would you tell them to do? How should they prepare themselves? How should they be? Like what kind of research should they do? Like what's the advice for professionals?
Yeah. The biggest advice that I could give is just to be experiment, right? Like you should make sure that your employer has given you one or more of these tools. I would highly recommend Microsoft 365 Copilot, but one or more of these tools, and you should be using it every day. Now, you see the stuff I do here. I could sit here all day and I could get virtually everything I need to get done without doing anything but working with Copilot. You're not going to do that whenever you first start with these tools, right? Don't have that expectation. And that's where you need to start small. Like, do you want it to help you write a more complicated email that you got to work on? Like, are you trying to find some information across a few files? And then do you need to generate like a summary table or something about that? Do you have a document that has content or emails, et cetera, that have content in them that you would like to pull out, like metrics and empirical information that you want to put it? So think of those little use cases like, hey, I'm about to do this. Let me go try it with AI. Now, a lot of times you don't have experience. You don't know how to give it the information. Not quite sure how to ask the question. So you might go try AI and be like, oh, gosh, that needs a lot of work, right? So then you go back and do it the way that you did before. That's okay, though, because you want to form that habit. And the only way to form that habit is to keep trying things and start to find things that are useful to you, right? So anytime you're going to start a task, just remember to go try to start it with AI.
Give it a shot, if it works out.
Yeah, exactly. And shot's an interesting word because I was just going to say, we have this concept of one shot or many shot. We talk about one shot means I give you one shot to give me the right answer, right? That's also not generally the way AI works. Generally, it's a collaboration. It's like you're working with an employee, you're working with an intern. It's like, hey, I need this. And it comes back and says, I got it for you. Well, yeah, but I don't like this section and that's not relevant and that's not what I asked for. You fix these things and it'll come back. Okay, well, I got it for you now. Right. So that's the next thing, too, is when you're not getting the responses that you want, make sure you're giving feedback. Make sure you're working together to get to the final solution. Because that iterative working together really, I think, starts to teach you how to interact with these applications to get what you want and where they make mistakes or where you make mistakes in terms of the way you ask for things.
You know what's crazy about that is like that advice is like similar to advice I got when I was first starting out as like a warehouse supervisor. Like it independent of it being AI, like that is just a good way to communicate and to prepare to solve problems with another party. I think that's like, I don't know if that's a good like insight or a bad insight, but I definitely think it's telling. You know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. So that would be the second piece is, start that collaboration. And I think really what I see over time then is, just start to try more complex things. And even sometimes if something is taking you longer, you need to make the time to do it and figure out how to break down that process or figure out, get your skills to the point where it doesn't take you longer. Because we all know that, like if we move from one application to another, we move from one way of doing something to another, very often it's not efficient because we're just learning how to do it. But eventually it's much more efficient because this was a new and better process and that's why we moved to it. And so it's kind of the same thing. Your initial exploration may be a little challenging, then you'll start to find the things that you like to do, and then you'll start to understand more about why it works the way it does. And then suddenly you're going to it for big stuff that you need done that used to take you a huge amount of time, and now the AI is doing it. And the time's not just everything. Like the work that we do is cognitively draining. It's exhausting, right? Thinking and thinking and thinking and synthesizing information. It takes a lot of that off your plate. For me, I think more clearly, I'm able to make better decisions. I'm not as drained.
You didn't spend 4 hours making a PowerPoint look great. Now you can't answer the next question you get.
Yeah, I didn't copy and paste from 8 emails and then type up a status summary. No, I just said, hey, go do this, and I'm going to think about something else.
Yeah, so when it's time to actually make a hard decision, like there's no cognitive dissonance built up. you're ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think I definitely could show lots more examples. I don't know if you have anything else, any specific topic or anything you want to get into.
No, I think I need to go meditate on this for a while. This is pretty intense. I'm probably going to go ask IT for access to Cowork. We'll see what they say.
Yeah, tell them you need InFrontier. Tell them you need InFrontier and you need Cowork.
Dustin, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me. This was pretty cool. This was very educational, and I think I learned something about myself along the way.
That's my goal. That's always my goal with audiences. So yeah,
there we go. Yeah, a little introspection. Didn't expect that, man. Awesome. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Once again, if you're following along at home, check us out anywhere you download podcasts. We are the Automation Insider, and I'll see you next time.